Torn and broken, nothing can repair. Black and blue from beating, suffering in silence, what can she do? Taken for granted, cracked and fragile, damaged, giving so much love but spilling her blood. All she needs is just a helping hand and a listening ear, a sign from God that her end's not near, a helping hand and a listening ear, a sign from God that her end's not near. Mama Africa, hold on. Mama Africa, stay strong. Mama Africa, your cry can be heard all throughout the Atlantica. Oh. Given up so much, no trust, been kicked through the dust. She wants us to feel her pain. Now we're suffering 6 good months in drought. We are hungering. We cry out in vain. Mama Africa, we feel your pain. The sun now beating down our backs. The rain is pouring, lost lives we're mourning. We cry out again, Mama Africa, all we need is just a helping hand and a listening ear, a sign from God that her end's not near, a helping hand and a listening ear, a sign from God that her end's not near. Mama Africa, hold on. Mama Africa, stay strong. Mama Africa, your cry can be heard all throughout the Atlantica. Oh.
It's my very quick duty to welcome you all here to Brooke House. I know we have a number of adult dignitaries here today, but I'm very pleased to see some young people here as well, because I think Brooke House likes to open its doors to allow for healthy debate on all kinds of issues, and this is certainly an issue that needs healthy debate. So we're very honoured to have you all here today to join in this discussion that I know Paula wants to see given attention in the Hands Off Our Elephants campaign. So welcome to Brookhouse. It's my pleasure to introduce Philip Murgaugh, who is the chairman of Wildlife Direct, who's going to officially welcome you all to this gathering. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, and in particular Bob Godek, otherwise known as Balozi Elephant or the Elephant Ambassador. Students, debaters, ladies and gentlemen, and all of those who may be watching this event around the world. I'd like to welcome you all to this function that has been organized by, amongst others, Wildlife Direct. It is indeed a historic function. It is the first time in this country that we are sitting down to debate a crisis such as we have facing our magnificent elephants. I would also like, first of all, before we go very far, to thank the school and the principal and the director for allowing us to have this event over here. My name, as the director said, is Philip Murgaugh, and I'm the chairman of Wildlife Direct in Kenya. For those who may not have heard or seen me before, I am a lawyer by profession. I'm now in conservation, but more importantly, I am a former director of public prosecutions in this country, which might explain why Paula decided to invite me to be the a director and the chairman, only at a time when she thinks everybody should go to jail. So I happen to be the chairman at the moment, and with us today, apart from Paula, who you've all seen, is Irungu Horton, a director of Wildlife Direct, and who you will later see in the debates. Wildlife Direct is a leading conservation non-profit organization, which you may have all heard, and as you can see, is a leading conservation non-profit organization which is at the forefront of conservation issues in Kenya and the region affecting wildlife, and in particular, the elephant and the rhino species. The focus of the organization in the last two years has been the species which happen to be the elephant and the rhino that are actually facing the largest or the most serious crisis. We have, and we will explain, that the appetite for the illegally traded wildlife products, in particular ivory and rhino horn, is so great that the two species actually face conservation. I can see through the lights, and I would like to recognize another conservationist there, Mr. Douglas Hamilton, and any others who may be in here. You know, you are doing a wonderful job. At the rate at which the animals or the particular species are being poached, we actually face the possibility of extinction of the two species in the very near future. We have, and we continue to have, Kenya, despite everything we say, despite everything the government does and says, we continue to see, you know, tons and tons of the product, be it ivory, and in the case of rhino horn, you know, plenty of it being transited through this country. So it must mean that there is something wrong or something that we are not doing. Wildlife Direct engages, just like many other conservation groups in the country, engages in public awareness programs, which for the first time includes this international debate at this school. It also works through concerts and media, including social media, and engages in various activities in collaboration with the government of Kenya and stakeholders, and where necessary, goes into or encourages and supports whistleblowing. The event, this particular event, has been put together and is actually taking place today largely due to the hard work of our CEO, Paula Kahumbu, who, as you all know, is one of Kenya's and indeed becoming one of the world's foremost experts in elephant conservation. Present and participating is my colleague director on the wildlife board, Irungu Horton, and I'd like to ask you all to look out for all the staff, interns, and volunteers from Wildlife Direct who are all wearing the Hands Off Our Elephants t-shirts and armbands. And if you'd like to know more about Wildlife Direct, and if you'd like to support our programs, please ask any of us today. The poaching of elephants and trafficking in ivory, as you all know, is a multi-million-dollar business. I think I've heard Paula say that it's more lucrative than engaging in the illegal narcotics trade. It's becoming that attractive. It's so much so that for a Kenyan, working or not even working, forget about not working, even working, there is this huge temptation to get into a side hustle and hope to pick up a kilogram or two of ivory and it may just in the hope that it'll change your life. In this country and in the region and on the continent, it is undertaken by a sophisticated international criminal organizations, not just one, many, whose power and strength, I point out, is beyond the control of many African country governments. So given the extent of the crisis, the whole problem poses a grave threat to the economies of many of these countries, not to mention the security dimensions. Support is required or needed for countries such as Kenya, which are generally source countries. And in your debate this afternoon, as the future generation, in both leadership and conservation, I will be listening out, and I'm sure so many others will, for innovative solutions to deal with the problem. I would also be, and I'm sure everyone would be very interested to see how suggestions are made or recommendations made on how to educate the Chinese society, particularly, together with some of the other Far Eastern neighbors, on the fact that ivory is far better on elephants than on their mantelpieces, on their dining tables, or any other places they place their ivory. It is the view of Wildlife Direct that it is through forums like this, that will be, translated throughout the world in social media, that will change, perhaps change the younger generation in those countries, who in turn will then discourage the entire society when their time comes to assume positions of leadership. In Kenya, in the last 2 years, Wildlife Direct in particular has managed to bring to the attention of the world and the highest levels of our government the plight of our elephants. And today, as a result of the efforts of Wildlife Direct, we have as our patron the First Lady of Kenya, Her Excellency Margaret Kenyatta, patron in particular for the program Hands Off Our Elephants. And maybe I should pause there and ask that you give her a big clap. A year or two ago, Paula, Richard Leakey, Irungu Horton, and myself, to mention a few, were in the media, national television, appealing for the government to sit up and do something. A year ago, it looked impossible. We were always asking that the media in particular, bring poaching to the front page. All the efforts paid off, and today, not only do we have a very active patron, not only, and in addition to that, of course, we should mention His Excellency the President. In all the President's speeches, in the recent past on the issue of security, there is always a mention about the menace of poaching and the priority with which the government is now handling the problem. And I think, and I say, the statistics show that poaching in Kenya appears to have gone down. Douglas? Yes? A little. Paula? A little. But somehow, somewhere, we still feature as a big transit country, and we should get off that list as well. It means other systems are not working very well. Anyway, the other reforms have been initiated. We have a new act in place. As a result of that act, there is a lot more prosecutions, vigorous ones at that. The DPP's office has a specialized prosecuting section to deal with wildlife crime, particularly crime involving ivory and rhino horn. The results are coming in. It appears more encouraging. Of course, the sentences, as you know, are much higher. But as I mentioned earlier, what do we have? The temptation is still great because the market is out there and the price per kilo is extremely high. You all know, those of you interested in wildlife crime, we do have a very important case in the courts at the moment involving a suspected kingpin in ivory trade. His name is Faisal. The case is yet to start, and the whole world will be watching to see if this case is successfully prosecuted. If it is, it may be the turning point. But all these are facts which I'm just presenting by way of background, and I hope they will enrich the debate that is about to take place. The Kenyan constitution, the current one, makes it the responsibility of all of us to get involved in matters like crime, in particular international crime, and in particular the conservation of our elephants. It's no longer something that we leave to the government. We now have not only a duty, we have a responsibility to speak out, be heard, march when it is required of us, and it's only in that way that a government sits up and does something about it. We've had wonderful support from many diplomatic missions, and in particular, special mention goes to the American embassy through the stewardship of the current ambassador, Bob Godek. And I would like that we recognize that fact at this point with a show of hands. And with those few remarks, I would like now to point out that we have as moderator somebody I've known a long time, John C.B. Okumu. I'm sure he'll be able to get the best out of us. And at this point, I'll ask him to come and take the microphone. Did you have any other questions? So, son.
I think Mr. Chairman deserves another round of applause. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Sibi Okumu. I am a broadcast journalist, and it's my great pleasure to guide proceedings for the rest of the afternoon and the beginning of the evening. What it really means is that I will be encouraging you to do two things: to keep time, which we've already lost in the sense of half an hour. And we did call people here to witness a debate. A debate involves many voices, many points of view, because as you've heard before, this is the first time, although it might not be believable, that a debate of this sort is being held. We're all convinced of the fact that we have these majestic animals in our climes and that they're being destroyed for an interest in a part of their body. We all know that these animals are finite. There aren't millions of them who can go on being destroyed between now and the rest of our human existence. And therefore, the big topic to address is, are we going to allow it to happen? And if it does happen, what will we have on our consciences? So it's fairly, but we want to have a reasoned, civilized, respectful exchange of views. And as I look through this room, I can see legendary figures whom I have only seen and read about. Somebody like Cynthia Moss. I don't believe that somewhere in the middle of my brain there's a whole bunch of stories emanating from Cynthia Moss. And Esmond Bradley Martin, again, a man of myth. If I see, no, seriously, because we Kenyans are very bad at this. We have all these extraordinary people in our midst and we pretend they don't exist. That's another debate that we're going to have on an afternoon. I also see here Ian Douglas Hamilton from Save the Elephants. These are people who've been on the case, on the job for decades. And the mere fact that they've agreed to come here is a great privilege to our gathering. And as the director of the school said, the fact that the people who represent the future of our country and of the world, people who are old enough to be my grandchildren, are in this room, it's very gratifying. So let's honor the occasion. And by the mere fact that we are being broadcast live across the world, we can put a big smile on our face so that when Grandma sees you, you look nice. And that when you stand up to say something, it's something that you've thought about beforehand and have already phrased neatly and succinctly. There's a horrible disease that comes with holding this instrument called the microphone. Once you hold it, as you can see, like me, it gives you a certain power. You just want to keep on and talking. But in fact, you can bore people to death. So, having said that, I would like to, there's a special gentleman that I like to see there. I want to wave to the son of the ambassador of Finland. He's now my best friend. I'm glad you came. So, you always have to choose somebody in the audience for those of us who are public speakers. I am speaking to the gentleman over there who's going to stand up. Do stand up. He's my man. So, give him a round of applause for having come all this way. And my instruction to myself is that since Mum has basically forced them to come here, we all had mothers in our day, if he can't understand the debate that we're having, then it's not worth having. I think so. Because we can't have the debate amongst ourselves, feeling all very grand and knowledgeable. The topic has to speak to this young gentleman here, whose name I don't know. And Madam Ambassador, thank you so very much for bringing him along. So, what's going to happen? I think we'll have a little icebreaker of sorts by seeing a very short film, and then a play, and then thereon after, a series of debates whose theme and focus I shall explain. Thank you so very much for coming, and I hope by the end of the day you feel that you weren't bored and that you learned something and that you leave with a certain conviction. So, things go wrong at this stage when I say, film. Oh, they haven't gone wrong.
A story is told of an old man who sat his two grandchildren round an evening fire to tell them nature's saddest tale. Once upon a time, he began, there lived big land mammals, graceful but dangerous, and we called them elephants. The elephant was one of the most beautiful, intelligent, and magnificent animals in the animal kingdom. I knew one of these elephants. Her name, Gogo. Gogo was a lovely creature. She was 65 years old, my age now. She was absolutely beautiful. She was huge, about 3.5 meters tall, and she had the most spectacular tusks that swooped downwards just inches from the ground. Her skin was glossy gray, and it turned shiny black when she went into the swamp for an afternoon swim. Gogo lived near the village, and every day she led her family wisely across the plains. She knew how to keep them safe and how to find food. Sometimes they would be gone for weeks and then reappear silently as if they were ghosts. Gogo had an amazing trunk. She could suck up to 20 liters in one sip and then spray it all over herself to keep cool. Her trunk was strong and powerful. She could stretch it up into the trees and pick leaves, or use it as a weapon against anyone who threatened her. At the tip of her trunk, she had two finger-like projections which allowed her to pick up tiny things like leaves and fruits, which she would give to her tiny baby. Once or twice, I saw her use her trunk to stroke her baby as if to encourage or show her love. She taught me so much about the savannah, about raising children, and about families. She was an amazing elephant. She was almost human.
But what happened? Where are they now? And if they were the most graceful mammals that lived long, how come they're not with us now?
The children asked. Gogo had a gift and a curse, the old man said. Her tusks. Her tusks saved her life, and they killed her too. When elephant tusks became a jewel to man, invaluable and priceless, people began to kill elephants for them. The craze for ivory became so huge that a poacher would make a lot of money out of selling them. Just one pair of tusks would earn a poacher as much as what a farmer would get in 12 years of farming. My heart broke when they came to our village and gunned down Gogo for her magnificent tusks. Gogo's tiny baby was spared by sheer grace. Her name, Mbegu. She was found left for dead, but was rescued and raised in an orphanage. She was a broken baby, so traumatized by what she had witnessed. A sight she will never forget. All this time, Mbegu was kept a secret. Today, the fate of elephants hangs loosely in Mbegu, hoping against hope that another will be found to further Gogo's line.
I have here a series of hashtags. Tweet for elephants, with the 4 as a number. Hands off our elephants, another. So tweet for elephants and hands off our elephants. And you can please follow us on Twitter at handsoffEles, E-L-E-S. So my young friend, I hope you've taken in the statistic that there are only about 500,000 elephants left, and 100 are killed every day. And it depends on whose lifetime, but they're going to disappear very soon if this continues. Let's now watch a play, and people, let's have some sort of intimations of being people looking relaxed. We've got everything's going to get completely if I'm sort of giving 101 on the subjunctive in French all over again, it's going to be very boring. Are you? We're going to watch a play. Don't be shy to come, to move. I know everybody's watching us. We're very, very pretty, but we can be human in the process. So we want to clear enough of the stage to see a group of performers from, if this slide will allow me to read, G-Pay Youth from Dandora. Is that correct? And I'm given to believe, as a lover of the theatre, that this group is absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to be amazed. Very difficult thing to do, but we'll see what happens.
They say, make the hay when the sun still shines. But we say, learn when you're still too young. On stage is G-Pay Africa from Dandora, ready to present a play entitled Battle Against Watching. Welcome.
All of you know that my beloved husband, your king, died not long ago, but that doesn't mean that this village won't move on. Exactly. Yes. I'm taking over his place. So from today, I will tell you what to do, when to do, how to do it, and where to do it. No questions. Before you do anything, you have to consult me.
Excuse me, my queen, but you are not asking permissions before. Your husband, I mean the king, died.
What's your name, old woman?
Mrs. Staff, my queen.
No wonder. You just look like a maid. I said no questions. Since you've broken the rule, from today your land belongs to me. Let me not find you there tomorrow, because you'll be a dead.
No.
Have that as clear to everyone.
My queen, I'm sorry. Oh, forgive me. My queen, forgive me. Forgive me, my queen.
Yes! Something new!
Like what, my queen?
Something that will make me look beautiful, that will make me feel strong and brave. You can go.
As you wish, my queen.
I'm going to my room. When they get back, let's go. get out.
But my
I said, get out. You, who turned into another person to enter here? Never.
My people, yes. I know you are all tired of doing whatever. Yes. It's now 9 months since she started doing it. But she has destroyed our land. Poaching, cutting down trees, and killing animals. I think we must stop her. I have written to our government and also to Kenya Wildlife Services. And I've explained them about the Queen. And they say they will send their officers and will investigate the matter. What do you say about it, my people?
We the teaching with the king.
Well, we will go to our houses and meet the officers to do the yawam. Let's go back to our houses.
I have sent you something. Have you come with the what? No. Why?
My queen, when we were on our way, we had to meet up at the river bank, my queen.
I thought they told you not to go where I had sent you.
Now, my queen, they were talking about me. Yes, they were saying that Mama Musa, the woman who we took her life at the last meeting, they had done everything to make sure that we can live forever, my queen.
What? So they have a gun. I will show them that I am Queen Madema and everything in this village belongs to me.
I want to go to Mama Musa. Do you know where she lives? Yes, my queen. Take me there. This is the place, my queen.
Where is that shop? You dare call me she? You are a woman. You and your son. What are your plans towards me?
What have you done this time, my queen?
You dare pretend. You and your son are planning to kill me. To kill me now or to listen? Listen. Tell him you will not succeed. I will kill him without him.
Don't kill my son, oh!
Tell him that I will do that.
Why? Why all this now? I know.
Today, I want you to kill many animals. Understood? I want many skins. I want to make more money. Don't forget to kill elephants. Many elephants. I want their tusks. You can go.
As you wish, my queen.
Don't forget to bring me meat. You can go.
As you wish, my queen.
I will look even beautiful than before.
My queen, you always look beautiful each and every day.
I have everything that I've ever dreamed of. And everything in this village belongs to me.
Yes, my queen. And also, you have more money to travel everywhere you want. And also, you'll be the richest queen.
You're very smart.
Thank you, my queen.
I love the way you're thinking.
Thank you.
I'll be the richest queen ever. I'm going to my room. When they get back, let me go.
My queen.
Queen Madeba, come out. I know you are inside. I want to talk to you.
You again? What is it like?
I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the queen.
You can't see the queen.
Hey, what is it?
My queen, this young man, let's talk to you. I told him to get up, but he refused, my queen.
It's okay. What? You again? I thought I want your old mother. So you've come here to cause problems?
Leave my mother out of this. I'm not here to cause problems. There are people outside. They want to talk to you.
You dare come here with your
going anywhere. Your guards are also outside. They are waiting to see you.
Young man, I say get out.
I see you don't want to go out. I can tell them to come inside.
What is the meaning of this?
You sent your guards, and they have brought all what you asked them to bring.
So you're jealous seeing your queen looking beautiful?
I'm not jealous. I'm just asking myself where you get all these schemes from.
You're very stupid to ask that question. But animals, I send my guards to kill animals and bring their skins. Also to kill elephants and bring their tusks. As you can see, I look beautiful.
I can see. You sent your guards to bring you skins and tusks?
Yes, even today, I have sent them to kill many animals and also to kill many fish and bring their skins and also their tusks. I want to make more money.
Wow, I see you have a good plan. These are my friends. Here is Inspector Mkujuku and an officer from Kenya Wildlife Services. What will you say about it, my queen?
Listen, I don't know what this man is talking about. I don't know these people. I've never seen them. No, the one who has been ordering the killing of animals.
No, we have been looking for you for a very long time now. But thank God, today we have finally caught up with you.
Yeah, she's right. You are under arrest for grabbing people's land and threatening to kill them.
You were also under arrest for contaminating water, cutting down trees, and poaching.
Hey, so let's go. Because anything you say will be used against you in the court of law. Let's go.
I know nothing.
That's nice. You must take him to the palace.
No, you're free.
You're free.
Yeah, thank you.
These are the words of Donald Hicks, a fellow human being who found it in response to care for nature. I know you haven't heard of him. It's obvious. We become deaf and as blind as bats, even worse, because bats at least know that this thing in the air helps avoid pollution of tree trunks and branches. So at least they know trees exist and live in their space. But we become a destructive lot. We've lost our purpose. But welcome to the beginning. When there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, the very same God who authored 2 books. First is the scriptures, which is obvious to you, and second is the book of creation, which you have all taken up arms against. See, after creation, man wasn't only given the Garden of Eden to cater for all his needs, but also got highly elevated as the caretaker of all creatures. See, man was made the CEO of creation. But somewhere along the line, it seems he misunderstood the meaning of CEO and took it as CEO, a call to extinct organisms. And it pains me to prophesy that by the time my grandchildren will be of my age, elephants will merely be examples used in classroom to teach biology students what it really means for an organism to be extinct. To see, respect the better part of our life, exploiting our environment is such a quest to boost our treasury. Forgetting the reality that life isn't just a pursuit of a salary. For God perfectly balanced the equation of creation. The gazelle was to feed on the vegetation covered the earth's surface, inhibiting erosion, and the trees purified the air and summoned rain. So we didn't even need irrigation in the first place. The birds were the melody of creation. You only knew storm when you had the corkscrew and the sunbird sing to welcome the sunshine that physically awaited for my plants to put their leaves. That's bad energy to every living creature. But man has since constipated the whole art of creation. And you probably think I speak out of religious obligation, but even if I took God out of this equation, you won't need rocket science to see how we contribute to this pollution. Instead of nurturing the environment, man has become a champion of its destruction. You burn and choke air with dangerous chemicals and still the act about to zone their depletion. You cut trees for commercial agriculture, forgetting that without the very trees there won't be rain, and then you'll be only digging graves for the farming culture. You are blinded by greed, killing thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of elephants for ivory, and still feel offended when you're not about it. You see, the truth hurts, but the reality is sometimes we got to fight the government for the sake of environment. Or what shall we do when the people we've entrusted with conservation of our natural resources are the very people at the helm of the island of trade? Right now, Mother Nature is weeping, but do you even care? Cutting 1,000 trees and planting none, you never see that's unfair. We are great beings. We are great beings, but just a little obstinate. Knowing what's right, but to persist in doing wrong. I still believe we can still heal this world if we become a little considerate. Let's stop poaching, let's stop pollution, and have some trees grown. It's only then that you can look at the future and hold with hope. Let me ask you, of what benefit is it to have a fine house without a tolerable planet to put it on? You surely have a choice to heal or to infect, to burn or to sell. But when the last elephant will be slain, you will finally realize that there's much more to an elephant than its tusks. Thank you.
Very disciplined, very tight production. I take one of my week for my theatre company, and I hope you noticed that everybody in the village was wearing, already has possession of the animal harnesses. Everyone's got one. I'm going to, I told you I'd be further up, further up, further up. Further up. In the interest of time.
So I know what she can come up with. And Dr. Winnie is, we managed how she might deal with her son and we discussed this, and I gave some sage advice on how he could manage his love life. And we're ready to go. So I'm going to sit here and have the format for the first of the 3 debate sessions. It's going to go something like this. They have opposing viewpoints. They will express them without interruption by my simply saying, state your case. Somebody from the audience who knows more about IT than I do will give me a set of green cards, and I will choose some questions which could be theoretically answered by both of them in differing fashions. And in order to sustain our focus, we're going to have 3 such 15-minute sessions. And then in respect that you are here, we're going to have a final half-hour session. And in that case, all the panelists will be there, and it's a free-for-all. Does that sort of make sense? In some of the debates, we found somebody who would be prepared to either introduce or comment upon the debate that's gone past. But I'm sure you'll appreciate that when you organize these things, people make some commitments. It hasn't been quite as we'd foreseen, but you'll see that we do have commentators and discussants for at least 2 of the sessions. The first one speaks for itself, and I'm addressing myself to my good friend in the middle. I'm just going to get his attention. The first discussion is on the topic, are elephants special? Should we treat them any differently for any other animal? Are they to be placed in the same category as ants? Being animals, can we just kill them because they have no useful purpose? Why are we getting so sentimental about animals? Are elephants special? Clara. Oh, you're beginning to control things, are you? Oh. So I was saying we'd have to wait for the wisdom of the elders, but obviously you've been commanded by the youth. You go first. 3 minutes.
Are elephants special? Okay, at this point, I'm a bit thirsty, and Tusker would certainly help me, but I'll go without because the young man is in the audience. But I think that as Kenyans, we see elephants with us all the time. They're part of our heritage. When you go shopping with your 1,000 shilling note, you have a herd of elephants telling you not to spend all of it. So elephants are parts of our heritage. When I spend time with Maasai people, they tell me stories of how elephants are like people. Elephants descended from a young Maasai girl that was going off to get married. She was quite reluctant about it, and she looked back at her mother's boma, which is Atabu, and lo and behold, she started to swell, started from the head, her ears got floppy, she started to swell up, her breasts got quite big, her feet got swollen, and halfway through, they realized she wasn't good for any marriage, and so they left her in the bush. And so every time Maasai walk through the bush, they actually look out for skulls of dead elephants, and they place blades of grass on those heads because elephants are their relatives. That poor girl that didn't make it to her marriage home. And if you go to Amboseli, around the ranches, you will see skulls with blades of grass in them. I have had to make detours many times to go and place blades of grass as I walk through with my Maasai friends. So elephants are special. They are part of our heritage. Long before the scientists hit Amboseli, Cynthia Moss and the band to write about elephants as sentient beings, as beings of conscience, the Maasai knew that. They knew that elephants behaved very much like them. They cared and protected their young. They looked out for each other. When an elephant died, they often found that the family members would place twigs and branches over the body of the dead elephant. They knew that when an elephant was ready to give birth, the others would surround her and stay around and trumpet and encourage. They knew long before we went to study this that elephants were special, and they behaved in a special way. The Kikuyu, they name the placenta, the afterbirth, they call it Jogu. It is the same name that we call elephants because both of them symbolize the beginning of life. Elephants open up the bush for other wildlife to thrive and survive. When the Kikuyu went into the Mount Kenya forest, when God dropped them there mysteriously, they needed elephants to open up the bush so that they and their cows would thrive. So they called them the beginning of life, the placenta, Jogu. So how can we say elephants are not special? Long before we wrote one word, long before the scientists hit the ground, the people knew that they were dealing with a special being.
You have to
Elephants
stop.
are special.
Clara?
So the one thing that we will agree on is that elephants are special. The only thing that we do disagree on is how do we value how special they are. We don't think that myths of creation, a collective consciousness, is going to save our elephants. We think that market solution, that means either you pay these Maasais for their knowledge, for conservation, and for tourists to pay us to see these elephants is the way to save them. We just don't think that what you're doing right now as conservationists is working. If 33,000 elephants have died in the past 2 years, something is broken. That's the crux of my argument, and I'm basically done, John.
Thank you. You've done me a great favor, so that we're going to think on our feet. I'm going to look around, and as I wait for my postman or postwoman with the tweets, is there somebody who wants to ask any one of these people here a question from the floor on this topic, not on how many miles the sun is from the moon, on this particular topic? Any show of hands? Oh, we're reticent. Right. So, yes, the gentleman, let's just hear from, I don't know whether we can get a microphone to him, one short, sharp question. Can you give him a microphone? Let's see how this works. This is always a bold experiment. A question, please. Oh dear. Let's just get this whole thing from our helpers. Can we have the microphone switched on, ready to go? So you just speak into them?
Yeah, I'm asking this.
Yes.
You've explained to us how elephant is highly valued within the Maasai and the Kikuyu communities. Now, I'm just asking myself, and how does the presence of the very elephants impact on the life of a Maasai Moran? Yeah?
Understood. The question
Yeah.
is understood. Yeah. What impact does the animal have on the human being? And it's got something to do with the question that I have here. Why not tie this, what is the real value of elephants?
The real value of elephants is experienced every day by that Maasai Moran walking through the bush and recognizing that if they didn't have elephants in this bush, the bush would close up and he wouldn't be able to feed his cattle. I know for many of us, we think of value as money in the pocket. If I had to wake up every morning and walk through the bush with what I value the most, my cattle, I would be thinking, how am I going to keep this cattle alive? Do elephants contribute to that in the life of a Maasai? I say yes. I know that the arguments in our minds have to do with, do elephants put money in somebody's pocket? Not directly, but the cows are the most valuable thing that the Maasai has. Is there an interaction between the Maasai, the cattle, and the elephants? Yes, there is, and it is a valid.
Clara, you seem to think that there's sort of an economic market-based approach to this whole topic. So are you suggesting that in purely economic terms of supply and demand, elephants will become extinct?
If we keep going the way we are, if we keep believing that the only value an elephant has is to clear the bush, yes, it will. Here's the thing. Winnie doesn't see any value in the value that she sees is purely when it comes to clearing bush, when it comes to creation myths. The problem is there's an entire market that exists that sees its value outside of what you see. And that's why we have poaching. So my argument is, why don't we have a legalized market for our stocks, for elephants that have died and that we have their tusks, and we start selling that so that when we burn ivory, just the laws of economics will tell us that the price will go up just because we have inhibited the supply. We're not doing it right. 33,000 elephants have died since 2012, between 2010 and 2012. Yes, to me, the elephant should have value for the Maasai in the fact that it will help him educate his children, it will help him grow, it will help him sustain our biodiversity, and it will also help us make sure that they're there for our children. So that is the value I see.
Again, thinking on my bottom, so to speak, I do believe that there are more people with more succinct questions than any that I could come up with. So please, be part of this whole process. Let's change it. We'll meet everybody, but now you're hearing stuff. What's your response, Judge? And let my team of helpers, let's get slightly more excited. Live microphone, so when you get them, they're on. Please.
Mine is just simply to ask, of what value is a dead elephant or an extinct species?
Of what value is an extinct species? So that, I think, is a story, a question rather, that goes to you, Clara.
I have no idea how.
Please leave our microphones on. They've got years' supply of batteries. They'll stay on forever.
I don't know how we've come from how elephants have value to extinct elephants, but here's my thing. If we keep going, I'll keep repeating it, if we keep going like we are, if we keep placing the value or expecting people to be good and protect elephants just because they're good people and that's what you're supposed to do, the value of the extinct animal will be a museum artifact. That's what the value is going to be. What we need to do is find economic solutions that make conservation worthwhile. And I'm sorry, but right now, being all in your feelings, saying that the only way or the only thing that we should do is prosecute people and not giving people an incentive for another economic activity isn't going to help us. So we need to find a way to meet in between.
Thank you. Once you've given your answer and you've got its import, we understand. Don't elaborate. We understand. We get it. Another question, please. The gentleman with a tie. You can see my wonderful working methods. I want to involve you in this process. So involve yourselves, please.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
My question to Madam, if I had her right, sorry for that, if I had her right, don't you think legalizing this market of ivory will give rise to black market, or actually which will be a threat again to our state of conserving this wildlife?
I think, sir, you'll have to hold your question to another session. It speaks more to it, the whole idea of demand. We're talking about why they're special. Remember our little headline? Why are they special? Why are we here discussing them this afternoon? There's a gentleman at the back there with his hand up. And that will be the last question, and then I'll ask Mr. Chief Nyamwea to comment on what he's heard. I haven't met Mr. Nyamwea, but there's always a first time.
My question goes, we are all moving digital. When we say the value of elephant is clearing the bushes and bringing life, should we be using this money to go digital and remove this elephant and we plant new infrastructures in there?
Sorry, I'm deaf. That's one of my problems. I'm going to ask you to say your question again and make a point or a question. What is the question? A question with a question mark at the end.
The point is, my point is, instead of saying that we should use elephant to bring life or to say to clear bushes for us, should we be saying that the money we get from this, we eradicate elephants, we start bringing up infrastructures and stuffs because we are all going digital. In a few years, infrastructures will be there.
Elephants in the digital age, is that what I'm hearing? They've all got okay. Yeah, okay. You were heard.
Actually, that's a brilliant question, coming exactly from the age that I would expect it to come from, because he's asking, so if we need elephants to clear bushes, why don't you just use bulldozers? Why don't we use technology to do what elephants do? Why do we need to keep them around what is so special about clearing a bush? It is difficult to explain the value of an elephant or the special nature of the role our elephants play in our heritage, in our ecosystems, in the few minutes that I have. And I would like to say this, that it is important for us to start as a nation from recognizing the values of our heritage that have nothing to do with money. Because money, at some point, becomes a resource that is quite finite. How much do we need in terms of money so that we say as a nation, now we are rich, we're good? So we must start by recognizing the value, the special nature of the heritage of this country, despite what money can afford us. And that's my thesis. I am saying, if you didn't know those things that I said about elephants being special, I hope you will find out more so that when we talk about elephants, we move away from the thinking of elephants as a resource that should give us money. They were there before we knew what this 1,000 bill was for. Elephants have been with us all this time. They had nothing to do with money. Let's value them as special for what they are and not because they can give us money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nyamwea, I'm rather apprehensive, just as a participant myself, that all of a sudden elephants have just become Kenyan. They're ours and our Daktari, I find that strange. Why should my friend from Finland be interested in them? Aren't they the property of the world? But then you'll come to answer this. You know more about these things than I do. Mr. Nyamwea.
Hi, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, humans on the internet and here. I wouldn't waste a lot of time introducing myself. I'll give all my time to elephants. All you need to know about me is that I'm a creative entrepreneur, which means that for a living, I have to get in touch with my humanity. I have to be creative. I have to go to places that convention does not allow you to exist. But as an entrepreneur, I have to connect that impulse to reality. And this is what I've learned by spending a lot of time with Paula. Very incidentally, because she happens to be a really nice person. And she gives a better commentary on wildlife than, what's that guy's name, the BBC guy? Big cat guy. Attenborough, exactly. Anyway, what I loved so much about what you spoke about is that you understood the problem at its core. The problem is culture. And there's no way of getting around that issue. There's no way of getting around that issue. I remember being a teenager and learning economics and all these other things. It was not adult to speak about culture, to speak about things like this. Serious people spoke about market forces and things like those. That's the mature approach. And you've understood that there's something that transcends market forces. And you've also understood the reality that we don't serve markets. I mean, markets don't serve us, we serve markets. Markets are the real artificial intelligence. We are worried about AI, and AI came to us a very long time ago. In this country, there are people old enough to know a time when everything that we are discussing about elephants, we could have been discussing about human beings. The only difference between an African and an elephant is that we are many. That's it. The very same questions were being discussed. How much is it wise to trade in human beings? And the very same questions are being discussed by sex slaves around the world and all these other things. It's not just here. Slavery is not over. There are people sinking in Lampedusa trying to get across from Libya. So the real question, which you've both understood, there's nothing I can say to perfect on what you've both understood, but that you need to globalize your view a little bit. There are people from Nicaragua to Australia to South Africa right now who are listening to this debate and recognize the things that we are talking about. During the hysteria of the Cold War, when, I hope I don't have to tell an audience like this that there was nothing cold about the Cold War in Africa. We bled over these questions. And the question was, yes, As an entrepreneur, I recognize the importance of markets to lift myself out of poverty using innovation. But we have to draw red lines. We've drawn several red lines. We've drawn red lines on child pornography. We've drawn red lines on human beings in some places, you know, but we haven't drawn red lines on elephants. So you're trying to tell the things that you're saying to a dehumanized society. We are trying to tell a dehumanized society who were themselves property once upon a time that you have to overcome. We want to be like America. We want to have those concentrations of capital. They look like histograms. You know, we want to have those histograms in our cities, skyscrapers, and we'll get there. We
So
want
you have to stop.
You know, I have to stop, yes, but there were some speakers who stepped out. This is important. I'm not concerned about looking good. This is my chance to speak to Kenyans and to tell you that we are a force multiplier. Homo sapiens are a force multiplier. Richard Turere, a single boy, came up with an innovation that is affecting thousands of lions around the country. A single Homo sapien can be a force multiplier. Innovation is the missing link. And once we involve all Africans in this conversation, you will make a Botswanan, a Zimbabwean recognize the value of elephants, not even in terms of markets. There are ways we can extract more value from elephants alive, if that's what we are really concerned about, than we can do. We are a continent that has only known how to sell commodities. We've never been, you know, had the freedom, whether it's one despot or another, we've never had the freedom to allow African citizens to innovate. And when they get a chance, they do crazy things. I've written a comic that's been in the hands of hundreds of thousands of kids who are quite possibly influenced by this thing that you're seeing right now. So I'll tell you something that all storytellers know. All stories are about us. We are a solipsistic species. The story about elephants is a story about us. The things that are happening to elephants happen to us, but we were many. We have to draw a red line. Otherwise, the markets will destroy us. Chinese people are not bad. I spent time in the Confucius Institute. I understand Chinese culture. I have a Chinese tattoo, Wo Aini, on my arm. And I understand that they understand that Homo sapiens are force multipliers. They understand that when human beings come together, they can do great things. They have not seen us rise up in our dignity and ask them, what would it be like if Africans were severing the heads of pandas on Tiananmen Square? What would that be like? How much could you offer an Ethiopian for the obelisks? How much could you offer Egyptians for one brick of the pyramids? They've drawn red lines. We need to draw red lines.
You can see why I get paid so much for what I do. A round of applause for my panelists, please. Mr. Houghton and Mr. Owino, and the injunction is be nice to my microphones.
Great, huh? Hold on, bear with us a minute. Oh, they look so good.
May I have some help in getting the podium to be moved across so that everybody can see? Again, from what I can see, already one individual has walked out. You know, when you're in a classroom, normally they can't walk out, but let's up our game a wee bit. Please move the... Session number 2, how can we save elephants? Do you understand that question, my good friend? How can we save elephants? And one of the things that you'll know, my good friend, is that I've known him for one day only, known him for half an hour, so I've got no special things. State your case. Should be. Really.
Okay. I speak again to the young gentleman. We were told earlier today that there are 450,000 elephants left on the continent, and they're killed at the rate of 100 a day. What that means is that if that rate of death continues, 45 years from today, when you'll probably be 50 or 60, there'll be no more elephants for you to see. I think the problem with that, no, I'm sure that the problem with that is not that the people in here are not concerned. What we have is that we should keep the goal of the preservation of elephants, which has been on this continent now for 30 years, well before you were born, but we must change the instruments, because the instruments are wrong. There's a lot of eloquence about preserving elephants and all that. But if you have to preserve elephants the way we are preserving or protecting an instrument, or rather one rhino, white rhino called Sudan, with 4 people running around it, that is the very evidence of failure. And so the methods that have worked for us for 30 or 40 years of supreme eloquence with the wrong instruments is what threatens the fact that you may never see elephants yourself. So let me tell you what we need to do. We agreed, we change the instrument, we keep the goal, and have no problem with the goal. One, there's an old institution much older than all of us. It's called markets. It did not come because we started to write the books of economics. It's always been there. And it tells you, when you have scarcity, you should speak to an economist. And I'm one of them. So let me tell you what it says. You change the incentives, which means we must change the interest that a person has to ensure that elephants live beyond today. What that means is they're not as interested in killing it for the purposes of extracting its tusks today, but actually ensure that everybody's balance, interest in seeing the elephant beyond the rate of extraction today goes up. And what should they do? They should privatize it. The problem is, when you talk about elephants in Kenya today, we all love them. I haven't had anybody who says they don't. And outside there, everybody loves them, but no one owns them. No one is responsible when an elephant dies. Instead, what happens, after they have failed to protect elephants, the Kenya Wildlife Services that we featured earlier today, we actually provide them with more money so that we see the sense of danger. What that has done is that they have an incentive in creating a crisis by making the gruesome deaths continue so that they can fill up budgets, from public budgets actually. So what we need to do is shift those incentives. And how do you shift those incentives? There's many cattle in East Africa as their people. Why? Because they're in private ownership. So what we should do is privatize the ownership of elephants. It doesn't mean, young man, that you'll be able to tether an elephant in your backyard, but it means groups of thinking people can hold any form of corporation, any form of ownership, and actually be responsible for their own herd of elephants. It's happened somewhere. There's an animal called vicuna that's been saved in the same way in the South America and the Middle Americas. Finally, as I said with the cattle, look at cattle for instance. Cattle were once wild species as well. And why aren't they extinct in as much as they die from drought like elephants do? Because somebody is responsible for protecting his own cows. In Kenya today, we love elephants to death, and we are literally loving them to death. So we must shift that by privatizing them. Thank you. As Casey stated.
Director of Wildlife Direct, would you like to privatize?
Thank you, Jeff.
State your case.
Thank you, Jeff Konange. I thank very much Kwame's comments, and he actually, by agreeing with me, he's made my argument much easier in the sense that we do have to conserve. I would use the word conserve, not preserve. But I think his solutions, the instruments that he's proposing, is tantamount to taking a toothbrush and trying to clean Brookhouse compound, school compound. It just won't work. Let me just touch on a couple of things. There are, as he says, about 400,000 elephants in Africa. What he didn't and failed to mention is that the demand side of that is completely outstripping what we have in terms of supply. If you just take the Chinese alone, there are 1.2 billion Chinese people. There are something like 200 million Chinese that become middle class, and as they do, studies show that up to 85% of them will want to have some form of ivory as an adornment or some kind of a spiritual symbol. Now, the fact of the matter is, if we just kept this market in mind, we would basically not have enough to be able to provide even for this Chinese market. So this is the first argument, that simply supply or the demand far outstrips the supply that we are able to produce. The second argument is an important one, I think, particularly for us as Kenyans. Kwame talks about developing a market, a private market solution to this. But actually, what does that look like in reality? Let's look at the whole chain, from the person who detects and follows the elephant, to the poacher, to the killer, to the transporter, to the person that transports it and traffics it across the world. And it ends up in Beijing and other places where you have buyers and you have clients. That whole cycle, or that whole chain, does not reside in our borders. We have no capacity, if we were to privatize and open up the economy of the sale of tusks and ivory, to control that. We would simply not have the capacity to regulate Singapore, Korea, or China. So I think this is the second argument, that we just cannot allow this to happen. I think the last argument for me is we could go back in history, and I think a little step into history would show that this argument of producing or giving a private solution actually has no basis in history. Let me give you a couple of facts. In 1973, there were 167,000 elephants, and this was the point at which we did not have a global convention to protect or ban the sale of ivory. Now, that amount of elephants, those 167,000, went to 15,000 elephants in less than, what's that? That's about 16 years. So the point that we actually banned ivory, we had gone from 167 to 15,000 elephants. Now, it has taken us 25 years in 2015 to come back to the figure of 35,000. What's clear about this is that a market-based solution, the relaxation of regulation, stiffer penalties, and incentives for all of us, not just the Kenyan Wildlife Services, to become rangers, needs to increase, and we need to all become rangers. So I would like to stop by saying to all of you, the only way that we can conserve this wonderful national treasure, this Pan-African global treasure, has to be by getting us all to become rangers. And I would leave you with that. Will you become a ranger too?
Mr. Holden, I want to thank you for that fine intervention. Questions? You can see we're enjoying ourselves if nobody else is. Okay. Here, thank you so much, Lydia. Oh, Felix. Felix, I wish I could say hello to you in Finnish, but that'll be my homework. Felix, my name's John. We're friends for life. The question here from our Twitter friends and the net. Oh, this has been, should the conservation of elephants be privatized? So we can't deal with it. We've dealt with that. Somebody once said yes. That was your... should humans and elephants be physically separated? Now, you want everybody to become a ranger. You want everybody to privatize. So what's our relationship? What kind of relationship are we having with these? Irungu?
Let me speak to the issue. Should we, what should be the relationship between humans and elephants? I think for all of us Kenyans, if we can't become an elephant, then at least we can become a ranger. Simple.
Kwame?
Well, the relationship can change in many ways. And if you look at it, one of the things that economics teaches you, that the societies that flourish and the goods that flourish, we all came in here in cars, are because they're privately owned. So the relationship can be one of, we are preserving a species that we like and we all love, but we are preserving them through the genius of markets, which allows us to have a personal interest in that elephant being alive beyond today. That's very different from the ivory side. And when that elephant is alive, it means that ivory is preserved as well.
Another question, thank you. Why is the poaching of elephants treated as a lesser crime? Why is the poaching of elephants treated as a lesser crime?
Yeah, I think in many ways we have seen a great progress in this country, particularly over the last year. And although I volunteer for Wildlife Direct, I think I would say that as a result of our work and the work of many other conservation organizations, you are now seeing stiffer sentences, you are seeing a swift prosecution. It's not as fast as we would like, but it's definitely improving, and we would like it to improve even more. Within Wildlife Direct, we would not advocate for shoot-to-kill policy. We would not call for capital punishment. We believe in rehabilitation. Many of the rangers that we now have are actually previous poachers. So in some ways, I think this is the point where I would agree with Kwame, is that the more we are able to bring society into the conservation of these wonderful gifts that we have and these wonderful creatures, that we would be in a position to actually see the reduction of poachers going forward.
Right, hand flashing up from the audience. Which one went first? Gosh, nepotism is all. Mr. Dodia, Imanchu?
With all due respect to you, sir, you mentioned that we should not talk about capital punishment and rangers being converted from ex-poachers. The reality is old habits die hard, and we have to get away from this myth that, as much as you coach them, mentor them, because of the economics, the demand, the current demand, as you rightly said, is outstripping the population of the elephants. I think we ought to take a stronger stand as a group, as a nation, as a continent, and respect other cultures as well, and really come down hard on sentences, be it capital punishment or whatever it takes.
Right, point made. Thank you very much. There's a cluster sort of group here. Sometimes the question's better than the answer. Let's just hear some questions. Let's just hear a gentleman in a white shirt there in the corner.
Okay, so to many of us here, elephants are beautiful heritage. But for a lot of rural communities, elephants are a burden. And how could we share this heritage with all people across Kenya so that they involve themselves free willingly and to join this cause?
Thank you. Can I look this way? Can I look here? Can I look here, not to leave you out? Okay, the gentleman, yes, the gentleman in the, I can't force you to ask a question, surely. Right.
Okay, my name is Daniel. I would like to ask, if I'm not empowered economically where the elephants come in, how would you convince me not to transform it into cash if somebody comes to me to kill it?
Right, I hope for my panel, just take all that in. Final remarks, a minute each, if you would.
Okay, I think your question is a very signal that conservation policy as we've had it today is failing. Because you've asked, a rural person living next to an elephant, why wouldn't he convert that ivory by killing that elephant to gold? And what that tells you is he has no personal ownership of that elephant. And therefore he has no incentive at all to protect it. That's the crux.
Irungu, if you would, comment on anything you've heard.
Okay, I think the interesting question, I think this conversation really has been about how do we conserve and involve more people in the conservation. And for many of us, we won't say this, but as we look at the great conservationists in Kenyan history, it doesn't escape us that many of them are white Kenyans, or there are brown Kenyans, and there are a few of them who are black Kenyans. And one of the questions that I'm always asked is, why is that the case? Is it that there's only a certain class or a certain race of Kenyans that think these are important? And I think the reality, first of all, I don't think it's true, because I think, as we heard from Winnie early on, is that elephants have been conserved and interacted with by Maasais and Kikuyus for many years. So I think it's partly wrong. But I think the point is simply this, is that there are models out there, and I think Amboseli is a great model, where you find the Maasai community able to reach out and take care of the elephants that are in their habitat and protect them as if they were protecting each other. And I think that's what we need to see happening in all our parks, in all our conservancies. And until we care as a nation, 40 million Kenyans of us care as a nation, it is true that these elephants will continue to be targets for essentially not just other Kenyans, but really very powerful forces that are live and work and profit very far from our legal authorities. And I think that's why we must care. And that's why I believe that the way to do this is that we all become rangers.
Thank you, Mr. Irungu Houghton, Mr. Kwame Owino. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Change of format, we're going to have some comments before the next session. And they are going to be given by the Ambassador of the United States of America, Mr. Robert Godek.
I think it's good. What? Maybe we need it over here. There we go. Actually, we can turn that light back up again. That would be good. All right, Hamjambo, habari zenu. It is really an extraordinary pleasure to join all of you here for the great debate on the future of elephants. You know, the first session here asked a very important question: are elephants special? And I know I wasn't asked to address that particular question, but I have to say that there really is absolutely no doubt that indeed elephants are very special. Everyone, I believe, who comes into contact with an elephant understands very, very quickly that they're deeply intelligent, emotional, majestic creatures. And everyone, all of us, every person should have an opportunity to meet an elephant. It really does. It's transformative. It transforms you. And from my own experience, whether it was meeting Babylon and Samburu, adopting orphans and Dato and Tundani at Sheldricks, to speaking with Enid and Elliot in Amboseli, meeting elephants, seeing them, hearing them, touching them, having them wrap their trunk around your arm, it has extraordinary power. And spending time with elephants is magical. They really are almost human. So when you meet them, it becomes powerfully, unquestionably clear that ivory belongs on elephants, not in carved statues or trinkets or baubles. But as long as people covet ivory, the elephants are going to be at risk. Recent studies show that poaching in Kenya has either stabilized or gone down. And for that, I have to give great credit to Kenya and the Kenyan people. And I want to pay a special tribute, too, to President Kenyatta for the recent burning of ivory, which I think sent a very good signal. Globally, however, whatever may have happened in Kenya, globally, the scale of wildlife trafficking continues to grow at an alarming rate. A Save the Elephants study recently estimated that 100,000 elephants were killed by poachers between 2010 and 2012. In 2014 alone, more than 30,000 elephants were killed. That equals more than one elephant every 20 minutes. And at that pace, soon there aren't going to be any elephants left in the wild. So our challenge as human beings who share this country and this planet with elephants is, how do we stop poaching? How do we stop the trafficking? How do we stop the demand? And this challenge is not just a Kenyan challenge. It's an international challenge. It's a global challenge. And to stop the demand, the issue in this debate, we really have to put an end to the idea that you can enhance your social status through owning ivory or other wildlife products. We must ensure that everyone understands the damage that poaching is doing. We need to make owning a piece of ivory unthinkable. You know, well, Asian countries are a principal destination for demand, and it's certainly the place that most people talk about. I also recognize that the United States is a destination country. So I'd like to point out some of the ways that we are attempting to reduce demand in my own country and to punish those who are responsible for the dealing in wildlife products. The United States has long prohibited the import of ivory, and we banned domestic commercial ivory sales. In 2013, we crushed 6 tons of ivory to demonstrate our commitment to end the ivory trade and draw attention to the seriousness of elephant poaching. History makes clear that if there are no legal sales of ivory, fewer elephants are killed in the hands of poachers. And to be blunt about it, to be direct, markets are not always the solution. They're not the solution to every problem. And it's clear from history that markets are not going to work to solve the problem of ivory. In the United States, we've also directly targeted those responsible for wildlife trafficking. We have Operation Crash, which is run by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Department of Justice, started in 2012 with the arrest of 8 individuals as part of our initial takedown of illegal traffickers in wildlife products. And since then, there have been more than 24 arrests, a dozen convictions, and Operation Crash continues. And there are charges under this operation of everything from violations of the Endangered Species Act, to the Lacey Act, to charges of conspiracy, smuggling, money laundering, mail fraud, tax evasion, document forgery. Severe deterrent penalties and serious prosecutions are an effective tool to stop trafficking. But we also need a lot of other things. We need trade experts to attack the movement of goods and to help enforce laws. We need finance experts to close black markets that deal in wildlife products. And we need strong wildlife protection agencies and community commitment through conservancies, for example, to help protect elephants and other wildlife. And the U.S. government is providing considerable financial and other assistance to both, helping, for example, the Kenya Wildlife Service with equipment and training, providing support to the Northern Rangelands Trust on conservancies. And perhaps most importantly, the U.S. government is working to spread the message that buying goods and products from trafficked wildlife and endangered species is unacceptable. We must persuade people to stop buying ivory, rhino horn, and other products that require the slaughter of wildlife. And everyone has a role to play in this. We want friends telling friends that they don't want to be associated with anyone who consumes, displays, or otherwise uses ivory or any other product from an endangered species. The San Francisco-based NGO WildAid works to reduce global consumption of wildlife products by persuading consumers and strengthening enforcement through a very simple message. When the buying stops, the killing can too. And here in Kenya, I very closely followed the Wildlife Direct campaign, Hands Off Our Elephants. I attended the launch, participated in the 1-year anniversary of this truly African, truly Kenyan campaign directed at addressing the scourge of poaching. It is a powerful campaign, it's an important campaign, and it's critical if we're gonna stop the demand. All of this, I think, all of what I've said reminds us that it is only together that we can end the demand. Together we can save the elephants. But I'm not here to debate this topic, and I've already talked longer than I should have. This topic is gonna be debated by Paula Kahumbu and Charles Onyango Obo. Dr. Paula Kahumbu is, of course, the director, CEO of Wildlife Direct, founder and leader of Hands Off Our Elephants, recipient of the 2014 Whitley Award, received the Order of the Grand Warrior State Commendation recently. And Paula has a doctorate from the very prestigious American University, Princeton, and of course was also formerly Deputy Director in charge of parks at the Kenya Wildlife Service. And Paula believes that Kenya's experience and knowledge of elephants gives this country a special responsibility and a leading role in the global effort to save species from extinction. And Charles is equally distinguished and a good and worthy opponent. He's one of Africa's and Kenya's best known journalists. He's the editor of the Mail and Guardian Africa and a columnist for Daily Nation and the East African. He studied at Harvard University, an equally prestigious American university, and he has his ear to the ground about what's going on in Africa. Charles writes mostly most political stuff, writes stuff on African political and democratic transition issues, political economy, and new technologies and social trends. But in his spare time, he also manages a blog, Naked Chiefs, which he describes as, I think this is right, an irreverent take on all things African. Yeah, it's quite a column, quite a blog. After the ivory burn on March 3rd, Charles wrote in The Nation, "Don't burn tusks, sell them cheaply to beat poachers and save elephants." Charles also wrote a very fascinating article, I have to say, "Ivory Poaching Needs Al Capone's Business Model." Al Capone? Al Capone, maybe some of you, I'm sure most of you know, but just to mention Al Capone was a notorious and violent crime boss who ran illegal liquor trafficking in Chicago in the 1920s. So I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that. But please welcome both Paul and Charles. I have to say, I'm very eager, and I know all of you are very eager to hear what these two extraordinary, brilliant African leaders, Kenyan leaders have to say about reducing demand for wildlife products and protecting our great gray friends. Now I'm going to ask them both to come up on stage because I have a question. I have the lead-off question for them. I'm going to take the role of John here. I'm going to borrow his job as a moderator for just this 1 minute. Come on up stage. Charles, Paula, welcome. You know, I think we have them to thank for this debate, by the way. They're the two principal protagonists. We've certainly seen them on social media, boxing, and all the rest of it. But the question I'm going to ask them to start this debate out is, if it were in your power today, right now, this moment, to take 3 concrete, specific steps to stop the demand for ivory, what would they be and why? And I'm going to ask you to be very specific, not general, no vague wishes, no hopes, no dreams. What 3 specific actions would you take that you believe would best help reduce the demand and save this extraordinary species, this magical species, the elephants? Thanks very much. Asante sana.
Charles, men first.
I'm very famous for taking unpopular positions, so I'll try to be very nice today. There was one question that was asked, that what are elephants worth? And I'll give you a number, because if you work with people from many backgrounds, it's easy to talk with the data. A live elephant in Kenya has been estimated to be worth $1 million, 680,000, $1,680,000 over its lifetime.
Sorry, Charles, I have to take you back 1 minute today. I would like you very much to address the ambassador's questions, which kicked off the debate. Sorry about that.
Okay, fine.
Your big spiel will be wonderful.
I'll do
three concrete solutions.
One, I would ban the Kenya WY, the Kenya Wildlife Service. Second, I would...
because that might be of... I would ban it because...
and I'll argue to that later.
Yes.
Then, the second is, of course, I would stop banning ivory. That was the other thing. And the third was I would actually ban national parks so that elephants roam free.
Right, so there we are. Radical solutions for our radical times. Paula? It should be on.
I didn't think it was going to be this exciting, Charles. That's very radical. And thank you for agreeing to come for this debate. There were people outside who said, how can Charles agree to go into such a hostile environment? So thank you for this. And thank you, Ambassador Godek, for those generous comments. This is an extremely important debate. And I think that different views need to be considered and discussed, because Kwame is right. Clara is right. What we've been doing has not been working. We do need new solutions. But the
Sorry,
problem...
Paula, I'll take you back.
No,
I'll take you back. We've got a lot of time. Please address yourself to the ambassador's questions as a lead-off to our discussion.
This is exactly what I'm doing.
Yes.
So we do need new solutions because the problems are different. These are not the same problems we've been dealing with for the last 20 or 30 years. They're very different. So I would do three things. Number one, this country does not have a strategy to deal with the trafficking of wildlife or the trafficking of wildlife products. We simply have the Wildlife Service who are struggling on their own. We need a national strategy that brings together all the relevant law enforcement agencies as well as the relevant experts who are in this country and outside of this country to help inform an effective strategic approach to intervening and ending what are really criminal cartels plundering our country and the continent. The second thing I would do is actually support KWS, not ban KWS. I think we need to move KWS into the 21st century to deal with the scale of the problems that we're facing today. It's not just poaching, it's human-wildlife conflict, it's habitat loss, it's all the other issues that we've been hearing about. The organization needs to be able to deal with it, but not on its own. Under the new constitution, in collaboration, in partnership with the relevant individuals, organizations, landowners, and international agencies. And thirdly, the demand in Asia will, if we allowed the Chinese alone to have the amount of ivory they want, elephants would be gone in less than half a year. We have to address this problem of demand. There are people who say, well, it's an ancient culture, it's a tradition, and you can't change it. Well, that's complete nonsense. Many cultures have changed. And in fact, the Chinese culture is changing every single day. And we, as Kenyans, as Africans, have to insist and demand that the Chinese change that behavior. All they need to do is ban domestic trade of ivory within China, in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Vietnam, in those countries where the markets are. That will annihilate the market by about 80%. This is what happened in 1989, and the price of ivory dropped from $200 per kilogram to $50 per kilogram, poaching stopped. Today, the price of ivory stands at about $2,000 per kilogram. Unless we kill that demand, it doesn't matter how much work we put into anti-poaching, prosecutions, we will not succeed until we manage to extinguish the demand for ivory in Asia. Thank you.
Charles, when you said that all elephants should roam free and national parks should be banned, were you speaking out of flippancy or as the world's greatest conservationist?
As conservationist, because where I agree with Winnie is, for you to address the question of ownership, you must take wildlife and elephants from, outside the cages so that they establish a relationship with the communities. And my way of doing this, I'll give you an example. If a live elephant of its lifetime, as I said, is worth about $1.7 million. Let us say that we take that is the value of the elephant. Now, like any property, we will probably trade 20% of it. Now, 20% of an elephant is about $320,000. And I'm saying let us establish that in a market, put it in a market, so that if I want to buy the share in an elephant, I buy it. And you can even create elephant bonga points, so that if I am a Maasai in there, I go and I buy, and the points are delivered to me on my phone, like an M-Pesa or some tokens. And if I want, I can go down the road to the agent and I cash it in. And, with that kind of relationship, you have to let the elephants move around. Because you must open their corridors where they move. You need to establish basically the same relationship that people have with their cows.
Paula, when you singled out the Far East, are you very conveniently not addressing the fact the ambassador said that America is significantly to blame in ivory trade, certainly as a result of my region? Are we letting them off because they come from the West and they're lovely?
Not at all. The size of the demand in Asia it's unimaginable. What the size of the demand in the Americas is minuscule in comparison. I think that if we're going to be strategic and if we're going to make a difference, we have to go to where the market actually is. And I disagree with Charles saying that we should just, accept these market forces, and Kwame said the same thing. These things have worked for such a long time. We should just apply the same to elephants. Well, if you were told that a vaccine has just been developed and don't worry, the last 3 times we tried it, we killed all the kids, but we want you to try it because the science says it should actually work. The fact is, you would say, absolutely no way. I won't take a risk if there's even a 10th of a possibility my child would die from that vaccine. Why on earth would we take a risk, do an experiment with an animal as important as an elephant, ban the parks? That's an experiment that would, if it went wrong, it would be disastrously wrong. I think we need to be very cautious because we're dealing with animals that once extinct, they're gone and they won't come back.
And Charles, this idea that elephants live in sort of symbiotic acceptance with human beings, they don't destroy their crops, they don't sort of gnaw at people's kids with their tusks and kill them, that they're not, you reckon that with a rising human population, we can live comfortably side by side?
Yeah, but...
And there is no encroachment upon human needs, with the human being making the greater claim to be there everywhere in the world, surely.
You see, and again, it comes to, let me actually, speak to this issue. Ultimately, you are dealing with the question of sharing the elephant cake, so to speak. Now, I'll give you an example from 2009. In 2009, the Kenya tourism industry made about 79 billion shillings. Of that, 39 to 55 billion of it was attributed to wildlife. And in that year, the park fees made 2.7 billion Kenya shillings. Now, the way the thing is shared is that the communities are supposed to get 25% of it. It was taken down to the local councils who stole 60% of it. And the Kenyan community in that year was left with 135 million shillings to share. You know what percentage that was? It was 0.03% of the earnings of the industry. Now, we can do whatever you like. If an industry gives the people, the communities, just 0.03%, the poacher will always win. And that's why the poacher wins. He pays better than the government and the Kenya Wildlife Service.
Paula, would you be so kind?
Look, I think that Charles is absolutely right that there are problems. No question, there are problems. I'm just not agreeing entirely with the solutions that he's proposing. It's very true that if you take Amboseli National Park, for example, the elephants spend 75% of their time outside of the park on private land owned by the local Maasai people. To date, those people make a tiny, tiny fraction of the revenues that comes in, and it doesn't come in the form of cash, it comes in only in the form of bursaries. So if I was a Maasai living out there, the elephants are coming onto my land, they're destroying my crops every now and again, they might kill my livestock or injure my children, I would be pretty pissed off. I agree with you on that. But I do think that there are very innovative solutions that we can start looking at, which allow us to not only benefit from this wildlife, but really reap the rewards. It's more than cash, as Winnie said earlier. It is not just cash that we're looking for, and it's not just cash that the Maasai are looking for. When you lose your crops, it's upsetting, but the Maasai still do respect elephants.
Like, I think we've set up the hot debate sufficiently, and I'm still convinced that there are more knowledgeable people in this room than I. Questions from the floor? The gentleman in the spectacles, if I may describe you as such, then the gentleman in the black shirt.
Hello, yep, Calvin Cotter. At a land use rate change of up to 8% away from wildlife habitat, and a stabilized population at 30,000 elephants now.
Apparently, there's a problem with your mic because we can't.
Hello?
It's sort of reverberating where we come from. I don't know. Sorry.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, how's that? I heard that.
Land use changes happening very fast, 8% per year in some areas, and that's a lot of elephant habitat going. So what will happen to elephants in when 20,000 elephants have to be removed within the next 15 years as Kenyans change their land use to agriculture, to hardening the land use? What will happen then to elephants? And is there an alternative way of paying people to keep elephants? What is that way?
Apart from bonga points, okay, I get it. Let's have a cluster so that we can have a feel for what's happening in the room. The two gentlemen side by side. There, you two, yes, please.
I would like to say that we all don't love elephants, and that's a fact. A child who grows up in Amboseli goes to school in order to leave the place because there's a better life out there. We don't have the Paulas of this world in that part of the world. Same thing to Masai Mara. We don't have children who dreams of protecting animals because they hurt us, they kill our parents sometimes, they hurt a lot of people in the process, the government comes down on us many times. Paula, what can be done to change that world so that we have people, a future generation of...
Mine is a concern to Mr. Charles. The point was to abolish the national park. The other point was like to scrap off the KWS. Okay, myself, I come from Amboseli. I understand what it means by human wildlife conflict. How should we control if you abolish the national park? And the second question comes this way.
Let's try another microphone.
Can you try it again louder?
My question goes to Charles. The concern was to abolish the national park, and the other concern was to scrap off the KWS. How will we control the human wildlife conflict for the case if we leave all the elephants to move freely to the village? And how shall we control the other environmental impacts that KWS are trying to control within the area or within the national park?
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you to respond. The gentleman there raised the idea, just those two before we lose the thread. Human ratio kind of thing question. Would you like to?
Sure. I think Calvin makes a very good point. We're here talking about the crisis today, but he's saying, what about in the future? The human population is increasing. We can't just have elephants roaming around, and the human population is increasing. Human-wildlife conflict will continue to rise. No question. That's why we need to put those plans in place. We're talking about land, zoning, and actually creating those incentives, the business incentives. In other parts of the world, the state actually pays to keep protected areas open. I find it really odd that in this country, we somehow have this sense that the wildlife has to pay for itself. And that is a very negative, it's a very negative incentive. It means that if wildlife can't pay for itself, then it has no future. I think we do need to restructure the way that we handle those issues within the government and within our treasury and how the financing is done. A question was asked about what needs to be done to win over these young people, especially in areas where they are living with elephants, where they do get trampled on by elephants or stopped from going to school. And I think that we really have a very important challenge facing us, which is the youth, the young people, children who are not getting enlisted and falling in love with elephants the way some of us did when we were kids, because we had wildlife clubs, we had National Geographic. We need to inspire and really mobilize young people in this country with very clever ways so that they become supporters. Human-wildlife conflict, it's a big issue. I think that we just need to really reform the way we handle the incentives and the penalties for people who live in areas where there is wildlife.
Paul, I have a great apprehension about this pronoun we. We must really reform. Who's we?
Okay.
Blame somebody. Blame the government. Blame your mother.
No,
blame somebody.
I'm not going to blame the government, because who is the government? The government is us, right? We elected our government. We pay their salaries through our taxes. We as citizens have a role and a duty to hold those same people to account. And we have a responsibility to also engage them. It's required in the Constitution, it's required in the Wildlife Act, that citizens of this country participate. And if we're not participating, then we should just shut up.
But I'm going to ask both of you to respond to some Twitter, and then we're going to call up everybody, and then we'll have the huge panel of 6, because we've got to come to a close, if that's acceptable. Or
I am powerless here.
that's correct. How do we make the elephant crisis a global concern, not just an African problem? I've heard that most people in China don't know that elephants are killed for ivory. How can this ignorance be averted? And lastly, why can't we put illegal ivory in exhibition as a warning and for education purposes, as written? And I'd like you to tie that up with any closing remarks that you might have to give your knockout punch, if I may, something like that. Ladies first.
Okay, when it comes to educating the people in countries where there are markets, there's no question the Kenya government really needs to take some responsibility and do this through our embassies all around the world, and to really do some diplomatic outreach. There's no question. We think that there needs to be much more information at the airport, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where 70% of the people arrested with ivory are not Kenyans. And there are people who think that it was okay to buy a piece of ivory in Kinshasa and travel back through Kenya with it. Can I just see those questions? Sorry. The idea of putting ivory on exhibition, I think it's a brilliant idea. We do need to have some form of monument to elephants that really makes us present to the scale of the slaughter that we're seeing on this continent and in this country. And it might, that reminder, like the ivory burn site in Nairobi National Park, really wins over the hearts and minds of everybody. But I do think that ivory should be burnt and destroyed, because just in the last week alone, we've seen the ivory of Gabon has been stolen from a court. Rhino horns in a Kenyan court were stolen last week. Ivory in Uganda was stolen from the national stockpile, and ivory in Malaysia was stolen. Ivory sitting in stockpiles or in massive amounts is a danger and a threat. How do we make this elephant crisis a global concern? Through events like this, by enlisting and mobilizing people from all over the world to engage in the conversation.
Right. Paul, I'd like you to, before you finish off, I'd like you to listen to something else. You must let the people's views be expressed. Here they are. How do you plan on going about convincing the Chinese to cooperate? 2, how do you intend to navigate an environment where people have come to worship money? You're actually dealing with the Al Capone types in this country. Good question.
Okay, on the issue of the Chinese, and I think we saw this before in the 1960s with the fur trade. The fur at that time was so valuable and very fashionable, and everybody wanted some. Exactly the same kind of situation we have today with ivory in China, which is not an ancient tradition anymore. It's more of a current fashion. It's a prestigious thing to wear or to own ivory. We have to shame people. We have to find a way to make it socially unacceptable to buy, own, wear, or give gifts of ivory to other people. And I think it's very possible. I think that can happen. Sorry, what was the second question? Okay, how do we intend to navigate an environment where we have come to worship money? We also worship in churches. We worship in mosques. And we don't go around saying, well, let's demolish the Holy Family Basilica, because actually that would make a very profitable car park. We don't talk about destroying and blowing up Fort Jesus, because actually that's a prime piece of real estate in Mombasa. We have values, and we really have to promote those values.
I'm here, and there's a question from the Finnish ambassador. Very close range. Good, nice time to catch me.
Thanks. In fact, not a question really, but just to really a big appreciation for the leadership that has been taken by Kenya, by Paula, the First Lady, and the President himself in this campaign, as this is an issue, as the US ambassador referred to as a global, sorry, global issue. So therefore, I see like the message sent out from Kenya today is crucial. Thank you.
I'm coming to you, Charles, soon, but hear this young lady's voice.
Sorry, this is for Mr. Charles. If you ban all the national parks, have you viewed the consequences, such as Kenya's economy mostly comes from tourism, and tourists visit national parks? So what would you do about that? How would Kenya's economy drop?
Charles, if you would.
There are so many questions. My friend Kwame, he came up with the most brilliant, suggestion on this, our good young friend's question. And I think it also speaks to the question of what do you do now that, human-elephant conflict is. Kwame's idea is that because Kenya has 32,000 elephants left, we break them down in 100 herds of 32 each. What that does is that all of a sudden there is enough land in 32 places in Kenya to carry 32 elephants. And you keep the economics of tourism, and then you reduce the crisis we have got into from needing to have single large areas. So you break it up. Break up the herd in 100, Paula, I can buy one of the 32, I can invest in it. And then the other thing is, how do you make the elephant a global crisis? Let us not delude ourselves, we cannot. The first thing we have to do is to make the elephant a Kenyan crisis. When Kenyans were asked where they would want to go to holiday or what they would do, 80% of them said they wanted to go to the beach in Mombasa. Today, a Kenyan is 3-4 times more likely to go to London to see the London Eye than to see an elephant. So the notion that there is this great elephant country and 40 million Kenyans are concerned about elephants, it is a lie, it's not true. So I think that one of the things that we have to do is to get Kenyans to appreciate elephants. And the second thing why I have things with the global thing is that until Africans care enough, it won't happen. Ambassador Godek, they killed over 5 billion of these things over the last, between the 1700s. So most industrialized countries, the reason why they come to Africa to watch this thing is that they actually killed off their elephants and buffaloes. So it's actually too much for us to expect that they'll care. But I think that once we care enough, I think that the rest of the world will. And can I put in? Okay.
Do.
Finally, I need to speak to the. It's really sobering, and let us go in 2012. There were 340 elephants that were poached in Kenya. If you take the market value of $2,000, as Paula said, those 340 elephants gave the poachers $7.6 million. In that same year, the Kenya Wildlife Service had a budget of 5.1 billion shillings. In other words, the Kenya Wildlife Service had 800% more resources available to it to fight. And in that same year, the contribution of wildlife to Kenyan GDP was 100 billion.
You have to stop, Charles.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Let's, by common consensus, or common is a difficult word, agree that we're going to stop soon. Having agreed that we're going to stop soon, perhaps we could have some more chairs on this podium, and I think we should chop our half-an-hour segment for questions from the floor generally to about 15. A vote of thanks. A comment on what we've heard from the legal manager of Wildlife Direct. A vote of thanks, and a thanks to you all for coming. I think that whole process... Sorry? Oh, there's a dance. Oh gosh, there's a dance. We can't, that's the most important bit. I left that out. The dance. There'll be a dance. Okay. Let's get the conversation going as we prepare to dance. Some more chairs. Possible? Wow, there's a flurry of questions here. Mr. O'Connor, the director, your school has been taken over by the elephant folk. These are all questions. These are all questions from the floor. But I think Luca, my friend, I'm always favoring my best friends. I'm going to favor Luca. Luca, please come up here. I think you need to be seen. He's my boss. You see the kind of friends I like to surround myself with. That's why. Okay, Luca, your question. Are you listening carefully?
My question is, why should many people invest in elephant conservation projects when most of that money is just spread around for other things?
Do you understand that question? Right, here we go, folks. So you have to start thinking on your feet. Now, the whole thing about the democratic process is that it's got to be seen to be working. So I'm going to put on my best bedtime story voice and read you some cards. And the instruction is, choose one question and one question only. As adults. One question and one question only, and respond to it. Not all 5 million of them. Do you get that, folks? Right. So what I hope this will do for you, you won't go home and say, that debate was rigged. My question I wrote down saying, shut down the government, and they didn't read it. Here goes. For people who never stepped foot into the parks, how would you bring the parks to the people? Do Chinese people ask if pandas are special? What economic value do pandas contribute to China? When will Africa own and act as guardian for its natural, timeless icon? A tusk in the black market is priced at about 200,000 Kenya shillings. How is one supposed to change the interests of these people, poacher, from attaining easy money through killing elephants? And how are we to be convinced that privatization of an elephant is more of a benefit than a burden? Should we, the citizens of Kenya, be allowed to domesticate elephants to help us in day-to-day tasks like transporting heavy loads? Can the researchers discover some other raw materials that can be used in place of ivory in the industries? During colonial rule, we had elephant hunting as a sport for noblemen. The bull elephant was said to be the most exhilarating form of elephant. This meant that there are still some people who embrace this culture and may not have knowledge about the importance of elephants, since there is that lack of conservation ethic in our culture. What is on the ground to make the locals get to understand this? Those who are smart use the uneducated locals to kill elephants to gain ivory. How can we solve this? Do you think elephants can survive without its herd? How will privatizing an elephant be of value to the local community when all they think of is money? Is becoming a ranger everyone's idea when it is obvious that there will be no direct value one earns from it when it is clear that the demand is high and the amount of money you can earn is a lot more? Is it time we accept that elephants and wildlife will be extinct and just move them to potential protected sanctuaries for the sake of future generations? Is it possible? Why can't we invest in production of synthetic ivory? We find that most of the ivory is used for ornament makings. Why don't those industries using the ivory as a material resource use other alternatives, such as bones, so as to reduce the killing? A suggestion: why don't you people create awareness through translation of the value of elephants in vernacular languages throughout Africa? Is it possible to have innovations, conversations with elephants to make the public appreciate their value? This is a pharmacist who's written a bill. How do Maasai benefit from this? Elephants, because you have become melting them along the conservation, yet the other communities can't see. These are all written with great passion, so they're legible as a result. Coming from a community where we freely interact with the elephant, I ask, don't you think availability is what is increasing poaching? And what is the government doing to ensure human beings are not interacting this much? How will the government help people who have been suffering from elephants' destruction of property and killings? How the citizens realize the value of elephants and yet they are only a disturbance to them when they are out of park. They only kill and destroy, especially in areas near parks of Makueni County. Instead of trying to convince all of Southeast Asia to stop buying ivory, isn't it easier to stop selling? Rule of law is the problem, not poaching. Hey, that's a good one. Hey, don't you think that China is just a scapegoat being, I think this should be done in an American accent. Hey, don't you think that China is just a scapegoat being blamed for the poaching? I believe the main poachers are within ourselves, especially leaders in power. How can we improve the lives of rangers who spend most of their time with elephants, since they sometimes collude with poachers? Are there any statistics of elephants killed? 1, by poachers, 2, by human-wildlife conflict. The last one. Why burn ivory, yet people in northeastern are dying of hunger? Why not sell the ivory and buy relief food for them? If we burn ivory, what proof would I give my great-grandkids that elephants really existed? There's a philosopher in us, and why should, yes, we've heard that. Why should many people invest into elephant conservation projects when most of that money is spread around for other things? So in other words, we are focusing, there are other things in life to deal with apart from elephants. Okay, folks, we've got to stick to some kind of plan. I know this is an inexhaustive conversation. We have some idea of the concerns of our audience. We have some idea of our Twitter feeds. This is the first of its kind. It needn't be the last of its kind. It can continue to survive and survive and survive, and more such dialogues between us. So again, I ask you to play the game. We're not playing favorites. We'll start with Mr. Houghton, Irungu. Give yourself a minute to respond to anything. And that, by that token, we'll have 6 minutes to go before we end the session. Thank you very much, dear.
Thank you very much, John. Do I believe that all Kenyans should be involved in this as private citizens? Yes, I do. Do I believe that we should create a market out of ivory? No, I don't. Do I think that the kikoi would be a better option if people wanted to buy something distinguishedly Kenyan? Yes, I do. There are a number of things that I think, for me, draw a line in the sand. The first is, a mosque, a bank is not like a mosque or religious institutions. They are different, but they have their uses. My debit card in my wallet is not like my national identity card, but it has its use. I think we are mixing apples and mangoes by trying to create a private solution to something that is really about public ownership and public responsibility. There are a number of things that I think we can do. I think we can invest more in development education. We can spend more money in reminding Kenyans of the economic, I guess, asset that elephants bring to this country. Ecotourism could be promoted in a much more vigorous way that it has at the moment. And we could ultimately create this as a national treasure and a legacy for all our children and our grandchildren. Poaching is a vile trade. It is insatiable, it is unregulatable, and it is really at the scale that we've seen in terms of humanity as that of slavery and sex trafficking. And that's why I would say we have to keep the ban on, and we have to keep the penalties high, and we have to involve as many Kenyans as possible.
I respond to the question about whether privatization will work. And by that, responding to the Honorable Ambassador's argument that markets don't work. But the way I respond to that is by giving a challenge to Paula. You have a voice. I think you should send out a challenge to the government of Kenya and ask them, give me 1,000 elephants. We will provide the model that I have proposed here. You can issue bonds by people who actually do not want the extraction, but want the conservation to be done. And tell them, measure my results against KWS in 15 years. I can tell you you'll have better elephants and you'll have proven that the private model works. Thank you.
Okay, I'll respond quickly to the private model by saying that in South Africa, rhinos are now seriously under threat. Most of the rhinos that are being killed in South Africa are actually held in private ranches. Privatization of wildlife is not a new thing. In South Africa, that is the model. Now, when market forces then become such that demand seriously outstrips supply, other mafiosi, Al Capone type of issues then crop in, and what ideally looks like a clean supply and demand equation that economists like to draw then goes to the dogs, and it is replaced by just plain greed and a desire to take all. I worry that privatization is now being sold here as if it is something new. It isn't. If you just go south, if you go to Southern Africa, you will see what's going on with the rhinos, and we can extend that to elephants if we tried that here. So I worry that when we push the privatization argument, we need to really see how it has caused rhinos in South Africa to almost go a direction that nobody ever imagined. Now, I want to also talk to the issue of the panda. The Chinese value their panda. Actually, if you kill a panda, straight out, it's the death sentence. Now, the Chinese value ivory. They want, every Chinese person wants some ivory, or so we are told, whether it's a hanko or a trinket or whatever. Now, what is it we have not understood? What is it we have not understood as far as those two values? The Chinese, the same people who want our elephants, are imposing the death sentence on those who want their panda. For us, we are unable to draw the red line. Who needs to come here to tell us that elephants are special, that elephants are valuable, that there is somebody in the other end of the world who would do anything to own something elephant? How can we entertain arguments about elephants going extinct? We have to move from that idea. We have to stop saying that elephants will be gone in 10 years. We have to get angry as a nation and say, look, really, what we have is a valuable resource. The solutions we have require all of us to get really innovative. And the young people in this room, please stand up and be counted. Elephants are special. Thank you.
Thank you. Clara, would you go next? Would you go next, please? The lady in yellow. The lady in yellow, then Charles, then Paula. Thank you.
I was kind of hoping I'd be last, but here's the thing that I worry about as a young person. You're asking for solutions, but when we do give you a solution, you're unwilling to try. In as much as you've seen that the method has failed already, you're unwilling to try new things. Then my grandchildren will not be able to see elephants if we keep going like this. So Irungu talked about ecotourism. Ecotourism is privatization of the resource. That's what they fail to tell you. They make us seem like the bad people who want you to sell your ivory, but there are other solutions for privatization. One of the major things is to make sure that there was a question about how do you make a ranger see there's value, and how do you make the poacher see that there's value. The solution that you offer to these two people needs to be more financially lucrative than the poaching is right now. And one of those solutions has been ecotourism. I want us to stop thinking that market solutions just means that we're going to sell all the ivory. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that, unfortunately, markets work, privatization works, and that these are the models that we need to start looking at, because it's not working if 33,000 elephants can be dead in 2 years. What we're doing right now isn't working.
I want to speak to the question of banning the ivory. You know, if we are historical, what is happening should scare us. If we were sitting here 200 years ago, guess how many elephants there would be on this continent? There were 27 million elephants in Africa, around 1815. It's really staggering. So it's technically you can say the elephant is finished if you take a 200 time. So for me, the bigger issue with the elephant is, yes, saving the elephant is part of, but I think that our priority is conserving our environment. And that's why I oppose the banning of the tusks. Because to me, I want to raise a Kenyan, an East African, an African who will fight for what we can fight for. I mean, like, it is useless today fighting for the white rhino. Once you have a whole army to protect, you know it's lost. And we did some numbers. I think about 15 tons of tusks were burnt. If that money was spent to take kids to Brook House, you would educate 441 children in Brook House. And absolutely, through 4 years of secondary school. Now, I am not willing to accept that there is anything that was more important in banning those tasks than educating 441 kids in Brook House. If you had used the same money to take students in the private medical degree course in Nairobi University, you would have trained 1,100 doctors on that money. So I am totally opposed. I think the way we should look at tasks is we have lost something. How do we make the best of a bad situation? So I say sell.
I have to respond to Charles first because it's outrageous, because it's a completely illegitimate argument. You cannot sell ivory that has been seized because it's already contraband. So there is no market that it can go into anyway, unless you're willing to put it into the black market, which means you're asking the government to do something illegal. It can't be done anyway. So that ivory cannot go into the market, whether you wanted it to go into the market or not, it can't. But let's say it could. It would be equivalent to us seizing a ton of cocaine and saying, let's sell this cocaine because we can raise money to rehabilitate drug abusers. I mean, it's the same thing. Putting ivory into the market stimulates the demand, and that demand is what is causing the slaughter right now. So that's why I say it's a completely illegitimate argument, and it's been demonstrated twice now in history. So while it might sound like we're not being fair, or we're not listening to possible other arguments, I don't think that's true. I think we do have a history. We also can predict where things are going, given the few numbers of elephants. I want to go back to the issue of the pandas, though, because that is where the problem arises. It's coming from the East. This demand for ivory is unprecedented. It's never been seen before in the history of the planet. The Chinese adore their panda, and we have had Chinese interns working at Wildlife Direct. And I sat them down one day and I said to them, why don't we kill some pandas and eat them? And they were almost crying tears. And they said, how could you even imagine killing a panda bear? Why would you do such a thing? I said, well, you guys eat dogs and cats, and a panda bear is about the same size. Why don't we just eat them as well? And they just said, you can't. I said, but what is it about the panda that makes it so special for you? And they couldn't really explain. They just said, but it's cute. It's a national treasure. So what has China done to persuade its citizens? There are less than 3,000 panda bears left in the world. Every Chinese citizen knows and loves and adores panda bears. Very, very few Chinese people have ever seen a panda bear. So what is the difference? Why is it? We're sitting here in Africa, surrounded by these magnificent animals. By the way, they're much more magnificent than panda bears. I promise you, they are unbelievable compared to panda bears. But we're struggling to persuade people to fall in love with these animals. We're struggling to persuade people to, even our governments, to declare elephants national treasures, even though they do contribute monumentally to our economy, to our identity, to our heritage and our cultures. So I think we do need new solutions. I think that market solutions may be part of it, maybe not selling ivory. I disagree totally with the selling of the ivory, and I hope that you're going to move to our side. I'm going to move my chair closer to you. I think this has been an incredible discussion, and we do need to look at alternative solutions and other methods, but we don't need to repeat history and the mistakes that we've made before. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A warm round of applause for our panelists as they leave the stage, if you would, if you come down. I'd like to call upon Ms. Linda Guittare, Legal Manager of Wildlife Direct. Liz? Oh, Liz. Sorry, Liz. Thank you. Liz.
The view is beautiful from up here. It's fantastic to see you all. Thank you so much for coming. When you have such a brilliant panel, and when you have such a brilliant audience who keep giving you soundbite after soundbite after soundbite, it's quite difficult to summarize the day. But I will try, starting from what John C.B. Okumu said when we got here, that if we cannot understand the debate, then it's not worth having. And I think it's important for all of us to go home with that thought. And we hope as Wildlife Direct that you have understood the debate, you have understood the issues, and that when you go home, your brain will be on overload, just thinking up solutions. We looked into the brilliant people from the first panel, told us that indeed elephants are special and that market solutions can save elephants, but we were reminded that elephants are our heritage, not only as a country, but as a continent. And when we went on to session 2 with Irongo and Houghton, who were brilliant in their own merit, told us that we can change the instruments, but we need to keep the goal. And that was from Kwame. And that the goal is to save and to conserve elephants. Irrespective of which model that we use, that must remain our goal as citizens of this country. Irungu emphasized on the need to change the interest of a person, and that the interest of a person to keep an elephant alive must continue to burn alive in all our hearts. Under session 3, we learned from Ambassador Godek when you were introducing Dr. Paula Kahumbu and Charles Obo, that elephants are deeply emotional, intelligent, and majestic beings. And we've also learned that they're actually more majestic than pandas, so yay to us. We also learned that ivory belongs to elephants and that nobody has a right to wear ivory. We learned of the startling statistics about the death of elephants, that we lose one elephant. We lose an elephant every 2 minutes. And it was emphasized that markets are indeed not the solution to every single problem. As we wrapped up, we got to understand that we need to go to where the market is, that we need to speak to China, that we need to create stronger diplomatic liaisons with China, and not only at the diplomatic level, but at the lower level, and have Chinese interns intern at our organizations, that we should also learn Mandarin. Kwame said that, not Kwame, sorry, Chief Nyamoya, that he can challenge our Chinese liaison officer in some Chinese battle. And I think I would like to wrap up this with a quote that stood out for me from the plenary, that we don't all love elephants. And most of the times we really do preach to the converted. And this has been an eye-opener for us in the conservation world, that we need to start talking to those who, quote unquote, do not love elephants. And that is where the battle will begin, and that is where the battle will end. That if we win that battle, we will indeed win the war. I would like finally to acknowledge a few people who've been instrumental in the organization of this debate, who've been with us from the very beginning. And I would like to start with Your Excellency, Ambassador Godek. Thank you so much for making time. It is very rare to get an entire afternoon off an ambassador. Thank you, asante sana. We would also like to acknowledge, in her absentia, Ambassador Sophie from Finland, and also Mfo Mfolwe from Botswana. Asante sana. We would also like to acknowledge our partners, KWS, through Mr. Julius Cheptei. I think a lot of people think that Mr. Cheptei works with or for Wildlife Direct, because for every single function that we have had, you have ably represented KWS, and we are forever thankful. Asante sana. We would like to thank John O'Connor from Brookhouse School. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us the facilities. Asante. From the Wildlife Direct Board, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Philip Murgo, thank you very much for making time to come. And Mr. Irungo Houghton, thank you very much for your continued support. I think that we have masked in the intelligence of some 6 fantastic people. And if we were all to be given a green card, not the American green card, sorry, that was abolished, this particular green card, to write out one thing that we have learned, or even 10, we would run out of papers. So I would like all of us to give a special applause to our teams led by Charles Obo and Dr. Paula Kahumbu. Asante sana. Mr. John Sibi Okumu. Sir, words fail me in expressing our gratitude as Wildlife Direct and as the audience in this great elephant debate. Thank you so much for your help and fantastic moderation of the debate. I would also like to thank Galleria Mall, who provided parking, ample parking and promotion for the event, and also a very special group of young Turks, let's go with that word, GPay group from Dandora. Those people were fantastic. And I think the gentleman who gave his spoken word, if he's still around and if I were him, I would sit right next to Mr. John Sibiokumu because he made an offer which you need to accept, that he will take you under his wing. So, special clap to that gentleman. We also want to thank the animators from Kenyatta University who produced and directed the film that we just saw. We would also like to thank people from Purple Jam Limited. We have had such a fantastic live stream of the event. It was without hitches, the sound was great, and the video was good. Thank you. Asante sana. I would also like to thank the judiciary represented by Justice Nzioki. Thank you, sir, for making time to come. I would also like to thank in absentia Save the Elephants, who are one of our Wildlife Direct's major donors, and also recognize in absentia, apparently, people who we work with in conservation and who have been tremendous supporters in this fight, Cynthia Moss and Mr. Bradley Martin. Last but not least, and perhaps most importantly, I want us all to give a huge, huge round of applause to ourselves. We are 500 members seated. We have 30 people on the internet following the live stream, and perhaps very, very significantly, our Twitter, what you're doing in tweeting and our Twitter feed reached 2.2 million people across the globe. We also had 14 million impressions. So we are not alone in this fight. And finally, asante sana. Please, all those solutions that you have, we are planning as Wildlife Direct, and we're thinking about having a Twitter storm. So kindly follow at Paula Kahumbu, at Hands Off for Elephants, at KWS Kenya. And once we get that going, we will have more profound discussions. Thank you very much for coming. Do not mind the rain, it's blessings. Asante sana. I think now the stage is set for the dancers who should be on stage right about now. Enjoy. Thank you.
One, two.
On the wired.
I want you to show me elephant here. Come on. 1, 2, 3. For everyone. 1, 2, 3. 1, 3. For one more time. Show me elephant test. Show me elephant test. Let's go. Show me elephant. Show me. Now, keep popping up like an elephant. Nose, back. Nose, back. Nose, down. Down on the blade. Okay, show me some silver. Silver. Show me some of the sword. Silver, can Okay. That was simple. Thank you.